Hello, everybody. I hope you can all hear me. If someone in the chat can ping a hello, because I've had one session so far as part of BB Dev Days where we were going for about 5 minutes before we realized that no one could see. In fact, thank you so much to the people in the chat for confirming. Hello and welcome to this BB CRM Ask a Developer session. I'm joined by some of Blackbaud's leading BB CRM experts today to work through questions that you've got. If they want to jump in and join me on stage, we'll kind of walk around and introduce ourselves. My name's Gethin. I'm a fairly recent joiner to Blackbaud. I've been here since January, but I've been a Blackbaud customer for about 15 years, the last 6 of which managing a BBCRM instance. So I've spent a lot of my time on the other side of this meeting and the other side of the BB Dev Days content. So excited now to be on the Blackbaud side and helping moderate this session for questions for our CRM devs. I'm going to ask the devs to introduce themselves briefly, give a kind of a little bit of background of their role at Blackbaud and their kind of history and relationship to Blackbaud CRM. I've asked if they have, and this is optional, a kind of an underused top tip that they can think of Blackbaud CRM, those kind of little nuggets of valuable information that people maybe overlook or don't remember but can add a lot of value, that this is a great time to jump in. But for everyone in the chat, please do start putting your questions into the Q&A section, and we'll start working through them once we've gone through the introductions. I'm going to pass first to Daryl, because I can see you're already.
All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Daryl Eichner. I am a senior principal engineer. I think my profile says I've been at Blackbaud for 11 years. That is no longer true. I've been at Blackbaud for 14 years. Started on Blackbaud CRM, still on Blackbaud CRM, started fixing bugs, just kind of, as a new hire, just getting the lay of the land. And now I'm working with many of the people on this call on some exciting UI enhancements and a little bit of everything in between. And pop quiz, underused tip. I'd have to say I'm one of those weirdos that likes writing test automation. I really like automated tests, really like unit tests. So what I like to do when I'm kind of writing test components to help me with my dev work, I'll stick to CLR, because the CLR components are a lot of it. I mean, there are some SQL components, sure, but you can just put dumb SQL and take all the business logic out of the SQL and put it in the CLR, which opens you up to a wide range of automated tests that you can write against it to really validate that your code works. So that's me.
Love that one. Thanks, Daryl. Tudor, I'll get to you next.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Tudor Pop. I'm an engineering manager for Blackbaud CRM. I started as a developer roughly the same time as Daryl, I think, 15, 16 years ago. Been with CRM my entire career at Blackbaud. I'm still a developer at heart, so I still get involved with the engineering process. I do write code every once in a while. And speaking of Blackbaud CRM, one of the things that I stumbled across the other day, and it's one of those things I always forget about, is this neat little feature that exists in CRM, and it's called database growth. It's actually a tool, an analytics tool that you can access from your kind of administration area of CRM that gives you a bunch of really useful stats on how your database has been growing. I find that pretty interesting, especially since you can see some of the areas you should probably focus on. A lot of times, just a little bit of data hygiene can go a long way. So that's my kind of tip of the day for all you. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tudor. Adam, can you go next?
Absolutely, yes. I'm Adam Hassler. I'm also a software engineer, Blackbaud. Now that Daryl's been here 14 years, I've been here nearly 11, so taking up that mantle. I started out actually on AllTrue, so I've been on Infinity products my entire time here, but a couple years into that, I switched over to CRM. But I do not have a tip particularly. So sorry about that.
No problem at all. And then finally, Patton.
Hi, my name's Patton Hilliard. I'm a principal engineer with Blackbaud, and I've been with the company 17 years this August, and have worked with CRM the entire time. The first 5 or so years, I was a technical consultant with the company, so I might have worked with some of you years ago, helping you implement CRM. But for the rest of the time, I've been working, with the Infinity platform with CRM. Last few years, a lot of focus around APIs. Recently, the Sky API. And now I'm working on our new Sky UX. But don't necessarily have a tip, but I have seen and worked with customers that have done some very interesting things with APIs, and getting a REST API for CRM, I think, has allowed a lot of people to build some interesting integrations and applications on top of CRM that are a little outside of the typical experience you have with just using the application in a standard way.
Well, thanks so much all for introducing yourselves. Let's dive straight in. We've got some questions coming in into the chat. If you see a particular question that you like and would like answered, please do give it a thumbs up, because that helps us kind of see the questions that are relevant to more than one customer. But I'm going to start with a question from Rich White, which is, in the Infinity SDK platform, there are certain variables that can be referenced in the specs and code. An example is current app user ID. And the question is there a list of such variables available somewhere?
I can take that question. It's a really good question. The answer is not that I know of, but it's a great suggestion for the SDK documentation and providing that to help out when doing SDK development. So I'll take a note of that. Thanks, Rich, for the question.
Are those similar to the global dot variables that exist in the expression builder? Because you get a list of the global variables, but is that a different set?
It's a level lower, I believe, or it's a nested level. I don't think we expose any of that, so we'd have to look into what's okay to expose and what's okay to document. But I do think that's a useful thing to have.
I'm going to.
Tudor, would you mind if I jumped in for a second? There are several. I'm looking at some specs that I've recently created. The good news is that when you create a spec using the SDK, at least when I do it, I think we're using the same SDK. Those variables are created for you. So for example, I have an add form and I have ID, which specifically works with the platform code, and a change agent ID. When I go to my edit form, I have the same ID. I also have a data loaded, and on my edit load procedure, which specifically is there to speak to the platform to make sure that the edit form was able to load the data so that you can change it and then save the new data, as well as a TS long, and that helps with concurrency. So there's just a couple examples of it. Like Tudor said, I'm not aware of any a list, but I think fortunately when you go to create a new spec, at least those relevant variables are pre-populated in the template, so that should help you out. Cool, that's all.
Thanks all. The next question with the most upvotes is also from Rich. It says, I saw somewhere that there was a feature coming that would allow a custom assembly to be unloaded. Has that been delivered, and how does it work? If so,
I can probably take that one, but I'm going to offer probably a non-answer in a way. We don't have anyone from our kind of success engineering group here. They would be the most suited to ask to answer that question. I do know about this functionality. I did hear about it, but it's not something that we in app engineering, so we represent kind of the product out of the box, have been working on. But this is a very good question, Gethin. We can direct to Brandon Winchester and his team.
Great. I'm taking notes of those ones with actions to follow up on later. Okay, working our way down in the Q&A. Is there any comprehensive documentation available for UI widgets, and also the ability to get an XML schema for the UI widget spec added to the SDK? That's from Nathan Olowski.
Not sure if anyone on the team knows, but I don't believe so, or I at least I don't know. So we would have to kind of take this offline and see if there's anything along those lines.
Yeah, there's the standard SDK documentation, but I don't know if that goes into UI widgets or not.
Right.
Okay, we've got a question here about the upcoming move to Sky UX, which I think will potentially be a lot of interest in. What, if anything, can you advise us about UI models and other advanced customizations? Particularly, is there anything that might be helpful to know now that will definitely convert or not convert over easily? I assume that's with a mind for customization work that might be happening between now and the go live of Sky UX.
Patton, maybe that's something you could answer. We've started looking into the customizations and the support for customizations in Sky UX. I don't know, Patton, if we have any concrete details we can provide other than looking on how we would support customizations in a Sky UX world.
Yeah, we are working on that right now. I'm working with Paul Crowder, who's really helping guide the entire effort around the SDK. And if you're familiar with writing customizations, there's the BBUI API that you can use when you write custom web components, and that's a very extensive API. And what we're looking at is a subset that will be available in the new Sky UX framework, and that has the form host. I don't know if you're familiar with that, you can look at it in the code base. I'm not sure if it's in the documentation. I'll take a look at that. But for forms, we plan to expose that and support that API. Now, when it gets to other things that are available in BBUI, that will be limited. We haven't completely decided what direction we're going to go with that, but our plan at the moment is to expose the form host API, which supports a lot of operations. You would be able to use customizations that call that form API. It will expose the same methods with the same arguments, and so that's the current thought on that. And as we work through this, what we want to do is look at some of the customizations that have been built out there, and we hope to work with customers to look at a few sample custom UI pieces and see how these would fit with the new API that we're going to expose. So we'll be looking at that over the next year or so.
I assume when we're at the point of kind of calling out for kind of early testers that will go out through the standard channels. Are we at that? Are we nearing that point yet of needing a kind of a pool of potential customers to be involved?
That's a question for, I guess, our product management folks. We're in the kind of fairly early stages of execution, but any milestones or any kind of timeline around things that we're going to present to our customers will go through that product management group.
Brilliant, thank you. This one kind of extends on that question. So it's a question from Kevin Hamling, which is, it's my understanding that we will need to change code in our current custom specs UI model with the Sky UX adaptation. Is that the case, or based on what you just ran through, does that mean that potentially there need to be reauthoring of existing customization in order to utilize the API you mentioned?
So is this for Sky UX?
Yeah, sorry for the Sky UX adaptation.
Well, it will be what we plan to provide is a subset of what's available now. So some customizations, say if you were calling endpoints around with the BBUI API, say you mentioned UI widgets or something like that, which is probably very rare. That sort of thing would not be supported. We'll be focusing mainly around forms, which most people use when they build customizations. In order to support the entire existing BBUI API, we would essentially have to rewrite everything in the old API to work with the new Angular framework. And so we have to limit that around forms. So, some customizations, the ones that are rare, considering that most people extend forms, would require some rework.
Yeah, but I think it's safe to say, Patton, that we're trying to execute on this with minimal kind of interference with the specs per se, and the UI model behind those specs. We're really trying to operate only at that UI level, at the call it the UI skin level, and not force code changes in the code behind as much as possible.
Fair. Thank you all. Okay, jumping across to a permission security question now from Lawan. The question is, how do you simplify and or restrict user access to the BBCRM ad hoc query nodes? And it says, I believe this will help eliminate some of the issues our users are having with getting the results they need from the CRM database. Quite a lot of interest in that question. Anyone want to open the box on the security model?
Yeah, and since we have Alex online as well, Alex, I know you've worked as fairly recently in the permissions and roles and security, record security area. Is this something you can advise on? I honestly haven't been in a long time in that area, but I was under the impression you could get pretty granular with the permissions all the way to the form and record operation level when it comes to various features, including information library in terms of access. And maybe Daryl, you might know something about that as well.
Yeah, we do have very granular permissions. One of the tricky things is that can make it complicated to get exactly what you do want, but it is great for security to be able to lock it down specifically to what you're looking for. There is, I think Lawan mentioned, there is indeed like a checkbox when you're saving or those queries that you can specify for certain roles to be able to edit the query or only be able to view as well. But over and above that as well, all this sort of individual features and things like site security as well can come into play if you were dividing up in there. So really just go and have a look at those. So someone who has the roles of system admin permissions, go and have a look at the granularity you can get to down on those features. And it's kind of difficult to give a more specific answer without knowing your specific use case, the best way of achieving, but you should be able to lock it down really to only the users being able to view the results that they should be seeing and use the queries that they should be seeing. So it's possible to have two users run the same query, but both see a subset of the results depending on their individual like site security permissions and things as well.
There's a follow-up from Jessica, which gives the specific example of being able to run queries but not edit and create. I haven't I have had that exact scenario set up, but can't go off the top of my head of how it was set up security-wise. And potentially by limiting access to the folders where the queries would be saved. I guess that's something we can take away, kind of come back with a working example of how it could be set up.
Yeah, so I think the person who creates the query and any system admin is going to have access to, obviously, have created the query and run it and edit it. The ability to create queries is like system roles or features. So a user could not have access to that ability and they wouldn't be able to then create the query. And when the original person who does create the query, they can specify whether general users should be able to edit it or if it should only be themselves and those with system admin access, I think, when they save it.
And to add to that, Alex, because you make a good point, as an admin, you create a query. At that point, once the query created, you have an option to assign permissions. It should be in the kind of the detail view of that query line. So assigning permissions, what that allows you to do is to give run and edit permissions to that particular query based on roles, right? So let's say you have a bunch of users in a custom role. You can get those user access to that particular ad hoc query, letting them run it, letting them edit it. And that should be doable by just creating a query and clicking on that assign permissions button.
Something additional I'm seeing is I have a query view spec open right now, and those represent nodes in ad hoc query. There is a security UI folder specified, and what that typically means is that when you go to grant permissions for individual user roles, you can grant or deny that permission. It'll show up under that folder or under that folder structure. Granted, that's just a breadcrumb, but that's something to follow. Maybe that is what you're looking for, or could help you achieve what you're looking for.
Brilliant. Thanks, all. Next one I'm going to jump to from the Q&A is again from Rich. If I create a stored procedure in the Infinity SDK and load it into BBCRM, can I later change the name of the SP in the spec, or will it fail when I try to load the spec with a different SP name? I'm assuming specs keeping the same ID. Yeah, any ideas of what would happen in that scenario?
If I had to guess, no. I think you should be able to swap the name, but the way to be safest is the opposite. If you have a coin, right, the opposite side of the load spec coin is the unload spec. So what might be possible there is, to be ultra safe, load spec takes and generates all the necessary components. For some, it's just a simple upload. For others, it has to create other components, companion components that work within the Infinity platform. So what load spec does is it generates all that and then puts them where they need to be. Load spec does the opposite. So if it were me trying this, what I would try to do is if I can do a simple reload in place, that might be enough. But if not, try unload spec on that stored procedure and then change the name and then reload it with the new name.
Brilliant, thank you.
Okay. No one else had
there.
anything, so I think I may have hit it.
I'm just having a look through if we've got anything in chat or in the Q&A. Here we go. Is there a relatively simple way to hide a constituent tile if there is no info to show, but show the tile if it contains records, say the interaction tile, for example?
It's been a while, huh?
Not that I know of off the top of my
Yeah.
head. Granted, it's been a while since I've worked with tiles, but I think tiles themselves are show or no show, and those are configurable. But to conditionally show if there's no data, I'm not sure if I've ever seen that. We might have to take that and poke around with it a little bit.
I was just jumping in to have a look at whether the visibility has that expression builder that you'd be able to leverage one of the expression forms on. But I
Yeah,
can't
let me
remember.
see. Let me see if I can find one too.
Yeah, Ryan
Maybe
mentioned
not.
that
Yeah,
you
Ryan
might be
had a
able to hide
comment.
it using JavaScript, so that's possibly one option.
Sorry, I missed that one. What was that pattern?
Ryan made a comment that you could potentially hide it in JavaScript, I believe, if that's what he's referring to. So, but I'm not sure if that would work. We'd have to test that one out.
Grand.
You can do a lot of JavaScript, and you can really kind of hijack the DOM and do a lot of crazy things, I would say. So that might be one of those hacky type of options that could work.
Great. I missed a question that came in right at the beginning. There's two. There's one. Are there any existing bugs? Which I guess probably there usually is with any large piece of software. But the next one I'll go to is there any chance the CRM will be able to be built using the .NET framework? I hope that makes sense to somebody in the group.
It'd be good if we could get a little bit more clarity on that, since obviously CRM is built on the top of the .NET framework, and we're using MS Build as the engine.
Is possibly the question .NET Core? Is that maybe?
Yeah, maybe along those lines. Yeah.
Austin, if you could add some further clarification, we'll potentially be able to pick it up. I've got a question here from Dominique. I have a question about modifying event handler add-in in a batch. Does anyone know if there is a way to access all of the rows currently in the batch in the .cs file? I know e.model.fields gets the current rows field.
So access all rows. I don't know. I think without that requires a little bit of research on our side.
It's something I'd have to play with.
And Austin, I believe you mentioned yes in the question around .NET Core. So I believe we have 4.8 framework at the moment, which has long-term support from Microsoft, and I'm not aware of any plans to migrate to .NET Core. I think that would be
there aren't
quite a
any
big
concrete
effort.
plans.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's something we have on our radar.
Great, thanks all. I'm just scanning back through the chat to see if I have missed something. Jessica, apologies that we're not fully grasping the question. I think I think if we go back to the chat afterwards, we can have a stab at coming back to you with an option. Anyone else has any questions they want to kind of pass in, please do add them into the Q&A.
I did want to mention one question I noticed that it was a question around Sky API and webhooks. That is something that we did take a look at. It is supported in Sky API. If you look at the RE endpoints, you'll see that there's some documentation around webhooks. We would have to work with product management to see where we could put that on our backlog and if we can get that on our backlog. But it is something we've looked at. something that we believe could be done. And I know that's very helpful when you're trying to build integrations, where if something that you want to trigger a message inside CRM, you could set something up, say adding a constituent, adding a phone or email address would trigger an event and fire a message out via the webhook. But we don't have any concrete plans in our backlog yet to implement that.
I'd like to go back to the batch question briefly. Others come in here and fact check me. I'm kind of thinking like, well, in an event handler, I want to see all rows in the batch. That kind of opens you up to the temptation to where, so an event happens in the UI in a specific row, and I want to use that in some way, shape, or form to change something in another row. I'd like to gently caution against that, because these batch rows are supposed to be atomic transactions in that they're not connected to each other. So if you're looking to kind of do some roundabout validation, in the code behind, in the .NET code behind, you can specify validators that will help you kind of make sure that your data is in line. But yeah, sure, there is a risk that you can enter in a row and then enter in a later row that maybe contradicts it, but you'd get a batch exception for that. So I would recommend using validators if that's what you're really looking for, because sometimes you got to think of what you're really going for there. But if the purpose is something else, we can certainly look into that. Adam, Pat, and Alex, am I completely off base with the atomic idea for batch? That has nothing to do with anything nuclear.
No, I believe you're correct. I mean, as far as I know, yeah.
Cool, yeah. Just a gentle word of caution.
We've got a question that I've missed from Rich about List Builder. Rich is wanting to include a record ID that is needed for a custom action, but doesn't want that record ID to be displayed to the users in the output of the List Builder. But if he's hiding the column that contains the record ID, the custom action no longer works. Is there a way to hide the record ID such that the custom action still works?
I think you do need that ID in there, and I think Nathan confirmed the same in a newer comment. I don't think you can get away with not including the ID and just kind of keeping the custom action.
Okay, so
because of the binding to that ID. Yep.
Because that type of behavior is possible in a user-defined data list, right? That the ID can be hidden but still leveraged for kind of actions.
That's true. Yep.
And stuff. Okay.
For data list, that's true. Yes.
Here we go. From Valerie, we're thinking about ways to try and get our own support resources to be more accessible to our users. Are there ways to embed any videos in page sections? Are there any creative ways that organizations have explored to get help documents, videos closer to work areas in CRM? Kind of advice on demand, I suspect, or support on demand.
I believe you can embed just HTML pages, just a standard web page in CRM. And I don't know if that's what's been done with the BBIS pages, but I believe that would work.
I was trying to think of something, maybe web dashboards.
Could there also be a way to do custom help? Because I know we have the little help tray on the side, and I know in many specs, or no, this isn't on the spec. I believe this is on the page spec within the section. You can specify a help document, which is an HTML form.
Right.
I don't know if custom documents if there's formal support within the SDK for customizing, like adding your own help with whatever content you want on it. I'm not sure about that. but I do know that functionality exists.
Valerie, for the I know that in Power BI and embedding Power BI in the CRM, we found sometimes there was different behavior, whether we're using a web page section or whether we're using the custom component with the URL as a parameter. And it had a kind of different impact over whether people were, whether it was sizing correctly or loading as sized. So I would suggest potentially trying both of those options with if you've got the video on a web page through something like Microsoft Stream, playing around with those to see if one of those can get working, kind of playing next to the information that you want. They can also be collapsible elements as well, so it gives that kind of hiding ability. Check in Q&A. I don't think we've had. Oh, I know we've got something new. To dive deeper into my change spec code with Sky UX adaptation. So I think this is a follow-on. If we have data forms with data form extensions and data form add-ins, but we are not explicitly making API calls to any Blackbaud APIs or using UI widgets, is there still a possibility we may need to make code changes on those elements? So I assume that's for anything using the out-of-the-box interpreter to create the form from the specs.
I'll have to take a closer look at that, but I believe that would be supported. That's something that would fall within the form host that I mentioned in the UI model. That Tudor mentioned that we're trying to stay close to and build around that and support that in the new Sky UX.
Yeah, and I can just add a little bit of color and say that I've actually very recently been doing some work to help support those extensions. I can't commit to any sort of like timeline on that or anything, but it is something we're looking at.
Brilliant. I'm just turning back through. I think we've covered most of the things that are actual questions. There's also people chiming in the chat with answers to other people's questions, which is fantastic, and makes me reminds me to point out, as always, the value of the Blackbaud CRM community and the developer discussion space. If these kind of questions come up outside of BB Dev Days, pop them there. There's a fantastic BB CRM community of users who are always eager to help each other with those kind of challenges. I think it looks like we're
the ideas portal as well, Gatton. We have like an ideas portal, which is really useful for us because we can gauge what people are interested in seeing. So don't forget about that.
Right, so we've got a couple of minutes left. Is there anyone from the group is working on that they're particularly excited about that they'd like to kind of flag or share, or anything from the content that we've already covered that triggered anything of interest that would be useful for this user group?
I think Kevin would like you to repeat, Tudor, about what you said about the portal, asking what it is in particular. I just want to make sure that didn't get lost.
Hold on. Let me see if I can share it here. It's BBCRM. I'll paste it in chat. This is mostly for features that don't currently exist in CRM or suggestions on how to improve things. As you can see, there's quite a few. And this covers BBS as well. So, and you can kind of contribute to this. You can vote for some of the ideas that have already been published. There's a nice breakdown by functionality areas or by functional areas in CRM. So that's another way to engage with us.
I want to say a thanks to Ernie as well for calling out what I was going to do at the end of this session, which is just to say a massive thanks to all of you for joining on this, because as he points out, it is incredible the breadth of questions that we get in these sessions and the kind of the mental gymnastics needed to be able to kind of go from one area of another in a system size of BBC is really incredible. I think we've got one. We'll do one final question to come in the messages part, which is: is anyone aware of any documentation on implementing Blackbaud checkout as a custom BBIS framework part?
Not really sure, but this is definitely something we can run by the BBS team and get you that answer.
Brilliant. I will liaise with Eric on what the best. I've got a list of a couple of things to follow up on, so I'll have a chat with Eric about what the best way to kind of follow up on those and make sure that that becomes available to everyone that attended this session. I'm guessing that it might be as a kind of a Word doc that gets uploaded to the session, maybe. But yeah, we'll find a way to get you the answers on those things. So finally, I just wanted to say a big thanks to the devs who've joined this session. Really is appreciated, as you can see from the chat from our users. And then once we wrap up here, I'm going to be dropping out the survey. I think there's it doesn't actually look like the survey is prepped, so there's normally a way to launch a survey from the side here, which I can't immediately see. So I'm guessing the survey will be following up later. Please, if you do get a chance to fill that, it's incredibly helpful for the organizers of BB Dev Days, just in working out what to plan next year. So if you enjoyed this, let us know and we'll make sure that there's a similar one next year. And potentially we will also have something, be seeing some of you at BBCon in Philadelphia.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We do really appreciate these sessions. That's why we've been doing them for so many years. It's one of our favorite BB Dev Days sessions. So appreciate all of the questions. Hopefully, we could offer a few answers at least, and we'll follow up on those questions we weren't able to answer today.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Mhm.
Bye.